Welcome, everyone, to the White Rabbit Podcast. I am your co-host, Matt Kraus, coming to you from Bonderma, Turkey. And your other co-host is Alpa Rosanes, coming to you from Barcelona, Spain. And Alper, today we have a guest on the podcast, Ben
Yes.
Steele. The other day, Ben and I were talking about LLMs, stuff like ChatGPT and Gemini, and the value of words. And as Ben was speaking, I thought, I want to hear this guy say these things on the podcast. So we brought Ben onto the show. Welcome, Ben. Thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, and say hi to our listeners.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm really excited.
Ben lives in Idaho in the northwestern United States in a town called Meridian, which is just outside of Boise. But he works remotely as a content marketing specialist for a marketing agency based in San Diego, California, called Siege Media. And Ben, did I get that correct? Is Siege Media in San Diego, California?
That's where the head office is, but that's where the business address is, but it's a fully remote company. So
Okay.
I don't think anyone actually goes to an office.
Okay. So Siege Media company, which is nominally based in San Diego, but in reality is spread around
Everywhere.
everywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
So before the Siege Media gig, Ben was a managing editor at the magazine Search Engine Journal. First, I knew Ben by name, and then I ran into him when he made an unusually knowledgeable and thoughtful comment about something that I said. And then, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, the other day, he and I were talking about words and LLMs. And as he was talking, I thought, we got to get this guy in the podcast. By the way, Ben uses the professional title Content Goblin. And of course, I was familiar with the word goblin, but the phrase content goblin, I had no idea what that was. Ben tells me that phrase content goblin is a bit of an inside joke in the SEO world, which is probably why I had no idea what it meant. And to those of us who are outsiders to the SEO world, content goblin is basically equivalent to the term content strategist. Now, Ben, help me out here. Let's finish up the intro so we can dive into the main topic for today. Is there anything that our listeners should know about you that I forgot to mention here?
I'm just to clarify the content goblin thing a little more. It's not necessarily that's the way I use it. It's not necessarily that it specifically means content strategist in my industry. It's not. It's a bit of a joke. There was an article that The Verge ran that was very mean about the SEO industry and called us content goblins. And so I was like, you know what? I'm taking it on. It's my brand now. But yeah.
All right. Own the phrase, Ben. Own the phrase.
Yeah.
There
exactly.
we go. Okay. And Ben, one more thing before we get started. If our listeners want to get in touch with you after the podcast, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm most active these days on LinkedIn. And so my profile is just linkedin.com/in/BJ Steele. And that's the best place to get in touch with me.
Okay. And so let's get on to the main topic for today, the importance of words. So Ben, maybe start us out here. Alper and I are both presentation trainers, and we hear people all the time saying, oh, I can just plug my slides into ChatGPT and ChatGPT is going to make me a nice presentation script that I can just read and that'll be good enough. And Alper and I both know that that's not a particularly good idea. We know enough to say, no, maybe that's not such a good idea. But you, Ben, are uniquely knowledgeable about the stuff. So help our audience understand it a bit better. Why is that not a particularly good idea?
So I start with questions when I hear something like that, right? My first question is, why do audiences want to attend your talk? And maybe perhaps more importantly, depending on how you view your career, if you're a speaker, why is it that event producers book you? They want to hear from you, right? It's your voice, your ideas. That's what's the audience is here for, and that's what people are paying for when they book you. So here's what happens when you just like run it through ChatGPT. ChatGPT applies a filter to your input, and that filter is all the shit everyone else has already said. Um, so Stephen Klein, the founder of Curiouser.ai and an instructor at UC Berkeley, calls this regression to the mean. Despina Gavrianis, another writer in the SEO industry, calls it flattening. I call it deadly writing. And that's a phrase I stole from a live theater instructor and theorist, Peter Brook.
Okay.
So I want to back up now to the technical term. So regression to the mean, then we'll get to deadly.
Okay.
LLMs know words as probabilities. The
Okay.
outputs aren't the result of like thinking in a human definition, but it's a highly advanced statistical model, right? They reward consensus and prune outliers. Consensus is often good, right? But we're not talking about a consensus of experts. We're not talking about a consensus of people uniquely knowledgeable or authoritative in a particular field. We're talking about the most common things people say on the internet and in books, in every book, in every source that goes into massive data sets, right? And so we're talking about the most common things they say and the most common language constructions. And that's what you're trading for the advantages that come with an LLM. What you're trading is
Mm.
you. You're
Okay.
trading away you, your thoughts, your ideas expressed only in the way you can express them, your thinking and your critical thinking. So,
So let me
Gabby, yeah, go ahead.
let me interrupt you and pause for a second there. So let me make sure that I am following you correctly so far. So if I'm a presenter, so the audience or the organizers or whatever, they have invited me to speak because they want to hear my ideas, not
Mm-hmm.
the averagedized ideas that are out there on the internet and have been sucked up by the LLMs and averagedized or what. There's a
Yeah.
technical, there's the non-technical term for you. Is that what you mean basically?
Yeah, and a lot of people say, well, I'm going to put my ideas in first, and then the
Uh-huh.
LLM is just going to help me like present them or organize them
Okay.
or help me talk about them. But that's not what happens. So it's not, even if you're not getting your ideas from the LLM, whatever you put into it, whatever you add into a prompt, whatever your input is, the LLM runs that through its filter of everyone else. And so you are eroding your ideas. You are
Okay.
making them worse as they go through the LLM, even if you think all it's doing is like giving you some good ways to summarize or some language. You're not doing that work.
Okay. And so if I have, let's say that, for example, I have, for how long have LLMs been out there for public use? A couple years. For a couple years, I've been dumping pretty much everything in my brain into ChatGPT. And if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is that almost no matter how much I dump my own brain into ChatGPT, the presentation script that ChatGPT sends back to me is still going to be kind of averagedized. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's
Okay.
because of the way they're trained.
Uh-huh.
So they are anchored in their training data, and training data is usually, especially for the big models, it's absolutely massive, and it cannot understand things outside of the context that it's been trained on. So,
Okay.
for example, even when they search, like a lot of LLMs will do internet searches, right? They will send agents out to do little searches on Google for you and find you sources and find new information. But they're still anchored in the way they've been trained.
Okay.
It's not, and so all of that is still filtered through the statistical models and probabilities that they've been trained that they create with their training data.
And then you also used a phrase earlier. What did you say? Deadly writing or something like that?
Deadly writing, yeah.
Deadly writing. What does that mean?
So, uh, so, um, I call it deadly. So Gavayanis talks about flattening, and what she means is that LLMs don't work to understand things before they spit them back out at you, right? They don't
Okay.
comprehend ideas. They don't attribute them to their source. Well, in a very basic way, they might be like, this is from here, but that's not necessarily source attribution because it's not investigating the ideas. It's not looking at that source and saying, well, where do those ideas come from, right?
Okay.
They just repeat what they see. And as more AI content fills the internet, it becomes a loop of blind summarization
Okay.
of all of its contexts. Now, that's why I call it deadly. And of course, all the real death that LLMs cause. That's another issue. Like I said, I stole this phrase from a guy named Peter Brook. He wrote a book called The Empty Space in 1968, where he
Okay.
coined the term deadly theater.
Okay.
I want to make this point because the act of the death of art, communication, and language has been going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it's despite how inhuman AI is, it's a very human process. So when Brooke was talking about deadly theater, it's not about like bad theater, but an art form in the active state of dying, a continuous state without an endpoint, but nonetheless dying.
Okay.
I want to read a couple quotes, if that's okay.
Sure. Go
When you
for it.
have why don't you, or I can pause to let you ask a question first.
No. Go right
I
ahead
would love
with
to
the
hear them
quotes.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to clarify that it's a dude writing in 1968. It on the surface may not appear super relevant to AI, but
Okay.
if you think about the way he's talking about art and performance, and you connect that to the art of speaking and language and art in general, I think you'll start to build kind of an understanding of how this is sort of a beginning of the process, and how I'm making the connection here that AI has exacerbated this process and begun to remove it almost completely from humanity.
Okay.
So he says in the book, the deadly theater takes easily to Shakespeare. We see his plays done by good actors in what seems like the proper way. They look lively and colorful. There's music, and everyone is all dressed up, just as they are supposed to be in the best of classical theater. Yet secretly, we find it excruciatingly boring. And in our hearts, we either blame Shakespeare, or theater as such, or even ourselves.
Okay.
Deadliness always brings us back to repetition. The deadly director uses old formulae, old methods, old jokes, old effects, stock beginning to scenes, stock ends. And finally, when we say I'm patching a few quotes together here. When we say deadly, we never mean dead. We mean something depressingly active, but for this very reason, capable of change.
Uh-huh.
So personally, I prefer the performance of humans, even a bad one, to anything AI produces. But deadly art, deadly language is a human thing, right? And I don't think it's the most common type of art. I think that all expressiveness in art has some form of value, but I do think it's become the loudest form of art. So I'm talking about the extraction of creative joy, the acquiescence of audiences to like deadly art is nothing new. This is like the Marvel problem, right? Everyone's bored by Marvel now.
Yeah.
Commercialization, when people complain about movie studios not having any new ideas, just remaking stuff all the time. This is all deadliness. And AI is the next stage of death.
Okay. So I have just a confirming question, and then I'm
Hmm.
going to throw it over to Alper because I don't want to hog all the questions. So Alper, do you have some questions for Ben in a few moments?
Yes, I'll wait
Okay.
for you.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll just limit it to one question, and then I'll throw it
Hmm.
over to Alper. So if I'm a presenter, let me see if I'm hearing you correctly, Ben. So if I'm a presenter and I aspire to be average, let's say that I've admitted to myself that I am well below average. Let's say that I'm at 40% and
Yeah.
I want to become average, then ChatGPT might help me. But if I want to represent myself, or if I want my ideas to have life or interestingness, then ChatGPT is just going to make things worse. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I view the way you should always view ChatGPT is it is a way to avoid whatever you're having it do.
Okay.
Right? It is not engagement with what you're doing, it is avoidance of it. So if you're using it to script, you are not writing a script, you are avoiding writing a script, you are outsourcing that. So yeah,
Okay.
exactly. If you're bad and you want to become okay, then yes, ChatGPT can do that for you. But here's the trade-off is you're not practicing the skills that are going to take you from
Ooh.
okay to great,
Yeah.
right? You are
Um.
not engaging with the work. And so you will always be average to bad because what ChatGPT is doing is, like I said, the loudest and most common things in the world are these like deadly art forms. And that's what ChatGPT is consuming most, right? It's
Okay.
an exponential acceleration of the death of language and art.
Ooh, I like these phrases. Okay, so go for it, Alper. What's on your mind?
Well, a lot actually, and it just added and added with each minute. Ben, thank you very much, by the way. I
Of
think
course.
I've heard by far the most accurate explanation. Well, accurate, not pragmatically, just by my own standards and close to my heart. The most accurate explanation of what comes out of ChatGPT or LLMs, and I think you said something like it uses probability for the next word that comes up, like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost numerical, you said, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That explains a lot of what I felt about the end product, which was it just seemed flat. And it was almost like, you know how in the 80s we had these TV sets with color controls. Well, every TV has color controls, but nobody uses them anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
it feels like flat and almost unsaturated. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that was the best explanation I have had to explain this thing that I feel close to my heart about AI results. But to play the devil's advocate, I mean, my disdain is no secret for the stuff that comes out. But to play the devil's advocate, I want to ask you: is there any area an LLM can shine in helping with the presentation, or are there areas where they absolutely should not be utilized?
So, I'm, as a content professional, but as someone as SEO, in SEO, there are a lot of low value tasks that I might use an LLM for, right? Now, that would be specifically in the context of marketing. I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
presenter, so I'm not entirely sure what your use cases might be. But here's where I think you should think about it. It's, do I get value from performing this task myself? So, in my point of view, there's a lot of kind of more basic content that I could probably get ChatGPT to do. It might be quicker, it might make my life easier, but often I don't. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason is because I want to be in the business of practicing mastery of my craft.
I
And
really like that.
a lot of boring work goes into that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are areas where um I would use ChatGPT in the SEO industry. There's a thing called meta descriptions, and it's like a little description of a page that is supposed to show up on Google results.
Yeah.
And basically they don't matter.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been some experiments about how they don't matter, to the point where some people have done experiments where leaving them blank actually increases click-through and performance, right? So that's how much they don't matter, but they're an industry standard. And a lot of the times, for example, clients will want to see them, and it's more of a waste of time to try and convince someone that it doesn't matter than to just like write 150 characters, you know?
Yeah.
So that's something I would use AI for. Because ethically, I'm only using it to describe the stuff I've already written. And functionally, I know it doesn't actually matter. So it would be a waste of my time to do it myself.
Yeah. And Matt, I have a follow-up.
Sure, go for it.
Ben, I absolutely loved when you said ChatGPT, when you're doing something with ChatGPT, you're basically doing what you're avoiding. So I love that connection. So you're writing your script on ChatGPT, well, you're avoiding writing the script. You're writing your opening, well, you're avoiding writing the opening. Have you yourself seen any benefit from actually doing that? I mean, the meta description was a good example, but apart from that, have you seen any other areas where it may come in handy, or are you like completely against the idea?
You know, there are times where my mental load has been really high and I've had to write something. I'm in a bad mood and I'm like, can you please phrase this nicely? And there are cases like that where like I want something that regresses to the mean. I want something to feel flatly polite, right? So, you know, there'll be times where I might use it for that. And of course, I change what it gives me. And so there are some ad hoc use cases. There are also when I'm doing a kind of analysis that involves pattern recognition, they can be helpful there. So one way I use it sometimes in research is I will upload like audience questions. I get data about questions that people ask about a topic, right, about a keyword. And I give it as much data as possible about those questions, what the audience is asking, who my audience is, and you know, what I'm writing for. And I'll kind of start to ask it probing questions about like, what do these people care about? Interpret these questions and try and help me understand the basis of their meaning and the underlying needs beneath them. And I use my own brain for this as well, but it can help me more quickly aggregate a large set of disparate comments and questions into like sentiments that I can actually start investigating.
And by the way, a question for both of you. Is the word slop a dictionary word, or is it an acronym, or is it slang for something in the AI slop?
Is slop a word now?
It's a good question. I have no idea. I would definitely defer to Ben on that. Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Merriam-Webster, don't fail me.
Because that's exactly the feeling that I get when I'm hit with an ChatGPT written article. It's like slop. It's the perfect description of it.
Yeah.
Oh, recent examples on the web. So Webster they don't have a AI focused definition, but they have some examples on the web of AI slop being used.
And Alper, I've got your questions for Ben kind of kicked off a question for me. Is it okay if I jump in?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Ben, I'm wondering, you and Alper were talking a few moments ago about potentially good uses or ways that LLMs might be useful as long as you're careful with them, like, you know, anticipating questions and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Another thing that people might ask us about often is, okay, well, I've got this presentation and I've, bought into this don't use ChatGPT thing that Matt and Alper are always talking to me about. So I've written out the script myself, but I just want to see. I just want some third party to analyze this structure, and I want to take my presentation and see if it fits the I don't know uh, the hero's journey structure or something like that. I hear a lot about this hero's journey in Star Wars and Joseph Campbell and all that stuff, and it's really confusing and it takes a gazillion hours to learn. And, I've got a job to do. I can't spend all day learning the hero's journey. So can I just take my presentation, which I've already made myself, and I think is pretty good, but I just want to see if it's following a structure pretty well, or if I forgot something in the hero's journey. Can I just feed it in there and ask ChatGPT, is my presentation following the hero's journey structure? Can I at least do that?
If you're careful about your wording and what you're asking it to do and very specific in your prompting, I'd actually say yeah.
Uh-huh.
So here's what I would do if I was going to do that. Let's use the example of the hero's journey.
Okay.
Start by finding an explanation, a detailed explanation of the hero's journey as in the way you want to use it, and put that into your prompt.
Okay.
Start there. Be like, we are going to be working with this information. This is the hero's journey. I'm putting it in because the LLMs have like a temporary memory in the conversation. So you can, in the same way that when an LLM produces a piece of text and you are looking at it, you are anchored in what has already been created, and that's why it dulls your ideas. You can anchor the LLM in what you want it to do. So if you just say, does this presentation match the hero's journey? You don't know where it's getting that information about the hero's journey from, and it could be making it up. Like it could just be feeding you bullshit. So if you want it to analyze something in a specific way, you have to give it the analysis tool first, right? And then I would say, make sure that you're not asking it to change anything. Just identify areas where it thinks that you're missing something or something could be improved. And if you need to use it as like a sparring partner in that way, I think that is one of the more, one of the lesser harm. There's always, I want to stress that it is always a trade-off. So it's like, when I say you can do this, and there is a way to do it well, there is always a trade-off, right? You are always avoiding doing this work yourself, and that is always going to come with the potential of like hallucination or the regression of your ideas. And so you just need to look for the comfort in yourself where those trade-offs are, and how you're reducing the chances of those trade-offs happening for you.
All right.
Ben, speaking of comfort, Matt, I'm going to jump in for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
Speaking of comfort, Ben, do you feel inside that as we become more and more standardized, I mean, as we are hit with more standardized, more this blend responses or content, we say, let's say, that your job is getting more important?
There's a lot of disagreement on that front. Some people say more important, some people say less important. My point of view is that slop is an opportunity for people who refuse to engage in it. It does make it harder. It really does make it harder for all of us who are just like desperately human right now, and deciding like I just don't like it. I don't like the algorithmization of all of my experiences, not just online but in my daily life, and I want to engage in human acts, in human conversations. It is getting harder to do that stuff. And so those of us who are committed to that do have to work at it, work harder, and there may be a lower failure threshold. because of all the slop, because people are exhausted. But a coach that I follow on LinkedIn, Jay Akunzo, he talks about moving from competence to resonance. And competence, of course, is like knowing your field, having worthy ideas, right? That's not enough. What he talks about is resonance. And what the heck does that mean? Well, definition is to have a particular meaning or importance, to affect or appeal to someone in a personal or emotional way. And the words there that matter to me are particular, personal, emotional. These are outside of the bounds of AI, at least, I guess, for now, depending
For
on
the
who you
moment, yeah.
ask.
At least for the moment, yeah.
I don't believe that that's true. I think this will be forever outside the bounds of AI, but this is what you have to understand if you are trying to build resonance, if you're trying to spread your message in a way that matters and to reach the right people.
Well, if people are getting AI partners and actually getting married to them, I would say there is some sort of resonance going on there. And I wish I could laugh about it, but I don't find it remotely funny. I think it's maybe the topic of another conversation. But before I end, I would like to ask, from an SEO perspective, do you find yourself, for example, having to shift your focus from the tested and tried methods to, like, Google was the god in that regard? Do you think the position of God in searching on the internet is shifting towards AI generated results?
That's a whole other conversation that I could talk to you about for multiple hours. So let me try and summarize it quickly. Yes and no. I'm not going to say it depends. That's the famous SEO refrain. My thing about, is AI going to kill Google? No. Why? Because Google was implementing large language models into search in 2018. They were first to this, and other companies are moving faster in the development of the actual tools. But Google is the one integrating AI directly into search, right? So yes, AI is becoming more prominent in search, and it's probably going to be Google doing it, and continuing to control the market share. That's if I had to predict, right? But it does change things from my point of view, because I see, as much as I don't like it, I see the direction that Google is going. Wants to, everybody wants to be a walled garden. Google doesn't like to send referral traffic. It hasn't liked doing it in a long time. And so I am preparing for a world in which a lot of the stuff that was done by people on websites is now done by agents and delivered to people in AI experiences. The good news for SEO is that AI agents need a lot of the same things from websites that people do. The other good news for SEO is that you still need to show up where people are searching for stuff. And I think that the public adoption of AI is overstated in the tech industry. I think that people are still going to be using websites for a long time to come.
I also had read an article this week about the overstatedness of corporate adoption of AI in the workplace. I mean, it turns out that it's not as commonly used or as widely spread as people think it is. But yes, I think we could have a completely different conversation about this.
Yeah, and there are some studies about AI adoption in enterprise. Something like, I think it was 15% succeed, or something like that. I mean, just from my point of view, AI and automation is becoming more embedded, and in some successful ways in the work I do. But I do think it's very overstated. I'm personally not a fan. There are some productivity gains that have been had. I can't necessarily lie about that, but my contention is that it's not worth the trade-off. Not that they're mostly useless, not completely useless, but the ways, and I have found ways to use them. My personal opinion is that I don't consider them to be worth the trade-offs.
So, Alper, we're going to need to wrap up here in a moment. Before we do you have any more questions for Ben?
Maybe for another episode, because I have several more of them.
Yeah, so we may be bringing Ben back on here in the near future. So in the meantime, we'll wrap up. And so that's it for today. And thank you for joining us for this episode of The White Rabbit. And we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you so much.
Ben.
It was a lot of fun.
Take care. Bye-bye.